A deafening crash erupted in the dead of night. Dr. Leslie Tompkins sat straight up, fearing the worst. Slowly and silently getting out of bed, Leslie reached for the wooden bat kept at her bedside. "Hello?" she said, hoping for a response in the dark of night. No voice replied, but when Leslie walked out into the hallway, she found her answer. Batman, bloodied, bruised, and beaten, lay on her wooden floors. "Oh," Leslie said, still taking in the shock of the scene before her. Gently, Leslie removed the mask from the man laying on the floor. Even through the blood, she recognized the face instantly. "The Batman is Bruce Wayne," she thought to herself, looking down at the mangled face, "and he's bleeding to death on my floor." On instinct, her hand goes to the phone and dials 911, but she stops short of making the call. He'll be in Arkham the second they stop the bleeding. She knows. So why can't I make the call? Something stays her hand, and with it, the identity of Batman remains a secret. For now. Vivid images flash through Dr. Tompkins' brain, bits and pieces she knows of Bruce Wayne's life from the news, but more personal memories too. After all, Leslie Tompkins was the therapist Alfred Pennyworth hired to work with a young Bruce Wayne. "I told him back then if he didn't learn how to control that rage, it would get him killed," she remembers. Slowly, Bruce awakes. His cuts stitched, bruises patched. He looks forward and sees the woman sitting across the room from him. Then his eyes dart to the floor as the pain and soreness sets in. "Hello, Bruce," Leslie says. "Hello, Leslie," Bruce responds. "You're welcome, by the way," she tells him. "For what?" he asks. She almost smiles. "Keeping you alive. Not calling the police and telling them Bruce Wayne is the Batman." Instantly, Bruce rises from his chair and asks where she's taken his suit. "Sit down," Leslie says, demanding that he tell her what happened. "And why would I do that?" Bruce argues. "Because if you can't reasonably argue why you don't need psychiatric help," Leslie levels at him, "I'm going to tell the world Bruce Wayne is Batman, and it will be for your own good." And so Bruce goes into the story. Batman was breaking up a regular robbery, the type that Gotham sees hundreds of each day. Taking down the culprit swiftly and brutally, Bruce failed to notice a partner whose gunshot rang out in the night. The shopkeeper was hit, and the gunman grabbed a child to use as a hostage. After barely missing with a batarang, the gunman opened fire on Batman, who dove through a nearby window. "Move your ass!" the robber called to his partner, and both men fled into the night. After murdering a driver and stealing their car, a brief chase ensued. After crashing their getaway car, Bruce took a knife to the side while brawling with the criminals. "I lost consciousness on the way back. Ditched the bike," he told Leslie. "So you came here to die or for help?" she asked him. "Either one would have suited me fine," he said, not looking her in the face. Leslie demanded to know what had driven Bruce to this life of violence and couldn't understand his answer. This was a choice. A vow. Bruce tried to explain his promise to his parents, his mission to Leslie, but she just couldn't understand. Leslie and Bruce talked through the night, Leslie trying to convince Bruce to seek psychological help, and Bruce refusing. "What do you want, Leslie?" he finally asked. "Explain to me why," she demanded. His head sank. "Because I'm making a difference." Bruce's fists tightened as he spoke. "It's not because Gotham City suddenly grew a conscience," he told her. "It's because of me." Finally, it seemed Leslie understood. She walked to the other side of the room and grabbed a stack of papers from her desk. "Sign this," she said. "It says that you're my patient again and legally protects our conversations." She laid out the terms for him. "Every morning at dawn, you will come to this office and we will talk about what you're doing. If you don't show up, I call the police." Begrudgingly, Bruce agreed, putting his signature on the dotted line. Morning dawned in Gotham, and Detective Wong responds to a call at a local business owned by Mr. Wesker. Zip lines had been discovered on the roof of their building, and the building owner believes it to be the work of the Batman. Showing Detective Wong the security footage, blurry images of a caped individual confirm the appearance of the Bat. Mr. Wesker, local billionaire and Gotham City tycoon, grilled the detective on what the police department was doing to apprehend the Batman, who he called bad for business. On the elevator down, Detective Wong ran into Arnold Wesker, the son of the illustrious billionaire, who mumbled to himself rather erratically as he and the detective rode together. When Detective Wong reached the station once more, she was called into a private meeting with several other department heads. The night before, it seemed the Batman had finally crossed his line. He had killed. Video footage showed the vigilante lining up criminals and kicking them off a rooftop in a grisly mock execution. The footage in question had come from none other than Wesker Capital. "What about the perps?" a cop named Hatcher asked. "I don't care if these guys will kill a clown's murdering 6-year-old girls. This is not justice," the chief told him. ordering all of the GCPD to focus their efforts on bringing in the Batman as quickly and efficiently as possible. The next day at dawn, Leslie Tompkins waits for her newest patient to arrive. The sun rises and still she waits. 5 minutes, then another, then another. Finally, she picks up the phone and dials, but as her thumb hits the screen, a creak in the floorboards lets her know she is not alone. She lifts up a newspaper with the headline "Batman Kills" splashed across the front page. "There's an imposter," Bruce tells her. "Someone's out there pretending to be Batman. Even if I find and stop him, it's impossible to prove who did what. There's no going back now." Leslie worries that Bruce is considering letting this imposter run rampant through the city, but he assures her this is not his intention. "I'll stop him," he promises her. "Do it quickly, Bruce," she warns. "You're running out of time." Meanwhile, the mild-mannered exterminator Otis Flanagan tries to eke out a living. He sympathizes greatly with the rats he's so often called to exterminate. "Everyone thinks they're better than the rat. I don't see it," he thinks. "People, not rats, are vermin." But one night, as he sits alone atop the roof, Otis sees an unmistakable silhouette. Otis tells the strange Batman of the time he saved his life after getting mixed up in some gang-related criminal affairs. Otis offers to help the Bat, offers to show him secret tunnels through the city. This silent Batman has a grim demeanor. He doesn't speak, only watches Otis and stares. As Bruce races to find his imposter and Detective Wan races to uncover Batman's identity, neither find it easy to make much headway. But as Bruce sits alone in his mansion stewing over the evidence, a knock on the door surprises him. He slowly makes his way to the door and opens it. "Yes?" he asks. "Mr. Wayne," his visitor says. "I was wondering if you have a minute to talk about the Batman." Another morning comes and Leslie Tompkins finds herself waiting for Bruce once more. Am I failing him again? She can't help but wonder. This morning, though, she finds herself remembering her first feelings with Bruce Wayne as a boy. He came to her office after getting expelled for fighting. His butler turned caretaker, Alfred, was on his last nerve with a violent child. Desperately, Alfred asked for medication for the boy to curb his violent habits. Tompkins refused and Alfred quit soon after, leaving Bruce in the care of a far-off military academy. But as she reminisces, a voice suddenly shakes her from her memories. "Dr. Tompkins," Bruce says, standing in the dark. "Let's patch you up," Leslie tells him. "So, what happened tonight?" "To catch an imposter," Bruce tells her, "I have to be everywhere at once." Bruce's first thought in tracking down the imposter was to gain access to the most far-reaching security blanket in Gotham, Wesker Securities. Breaking into their facilities, Batman faced little difficulty beyond some guards. Getting out was a different story. Bruce fought dozens of guards to escape Wesker's headquarters, sustaining heavy wounds in the process. After he finally plummeted off of the roof, Batman was found by Arnold Wesker. The man seemed extremely deranged and held a wooden puppet close at all times, occasionally speaking through it as if it was alive. Arnold asked Batman to kill his father, saying, "He's one of the bad guys." But Batman didn't reply, simply sneaking off into the darkness of the night. Leslie tried to get more answers out of Bruce, but failed to make any real headway. "So," she changed topics, "what's happening with your detective?" "My detective?" Bruce asked. "Or are we calling her Blair now?" Leslie smirked. Blair Wong and Bruce had talked at length, but Bruce hadn't given her any insight into her developing case against the Batman. Even when Blair accused Bruce of funding Batman's crusade, Bruce distanced himself successfully from any links to the vigilante. Meanwhile, however, Gotham's bad imposter problem had only been worsening. 10 people, all of them criminals of the kind Batman leaves beaten but alive, had been killed on camera by someone dressing up as the Bat. Bruce told Leslie that he was using his newfound acquaintanceship with Blair Wong to get closer to the GCPD and possibly take a look at their case files. When Leslie questions how smart getting close to a cop would be for someone like Bruce, he reveals to her that Detective Wong's parents were killed right in front of her eyes as a child, just like his own. Slowly but surely, Bruce begins to get closer to Blair. Eventually, the two form something of an unexpected friendship. "What is this?" Blair finally asks Bruce after he asks her to dinner. "You're the detective, he coyly tells her. When Leslie asks Bruce about the date with the detective, Bruce's demeanor changes entirely. "It just took the one dinner," he tells her. "We didn't talk about Batman, cops, criminals, killing sprees. She already knew the same thing I did. We're the only ones who could ever understand each other." Flashes of the date hang in Bruce's mind as he tells Leslie about Blair. "I'm falling in love," he admits. Eventually, Bruce and Blair find themselves sleeping together. They bond over their shared trauma and life experiences. "I've spent my life trying to keep what happened to me from happening to anyone else," Blair confided in Bruce one night. "I know that sounds crazy." All Bruce wanted was to put his trust in Blair and admit to her he had dedicated his life to the same goal. But he couldn't. After their night together, Bruce hacked into Blair's computer, finally acquiring the files from the GCPD he needed to find a lead on his imposter. "I'm not proud of this," he thought, "but the mission is all that matters." And in the end, Bruce found what he was looking for. 9 out of the 11 imposter victims were sentenced by the same judge. He realized in shock. Both Blair and Bruce were now working the same case, though Detective Wan had no idea, of course. Both detectives began combing through the case files and security tapes, and both found one alarming similarity between the crime scenes: an exterminator's van under the name of Otis's Ratcatcher. An accomplice, Batman realized, racing off to find Otis first, but Blair had caught the scent of the trail too. Batman even passed the police car on his way to track down the exterminator. The police reached Otis first. Blair, with the help of fellow cop Hatcher, busted down the Ratcatcher's door and took him into custody. But when they got the suspect down to their police car, they were taken by a smoke grenade from Batman's bike. It erupted on the windshield and instantly blinded both detectives, causing chaos and mayhem to ensue. Stunned and undeterred from bringing in her collar, Detective Wong made it out of the vehicle and found Batman trying to smuggle Otis out of the crime scene. "Don't move," she ordered as she held her gun to his head. "No," Batman whispered, knowing what he must do but unwilling to accept it. In one swift motion, Bruce unarmed Blair and with a heavy kick sent her sprawling across the street. "Don't get up," he told her. Though he was forced to hurt the woman he had fallen for, Bruce had succeeded in kidnapping his only lead to the imposter. "Who is he?" Batman yelled at Otis as he held the man underwater. "The Batman, the imposter you've been working for. Who is he?" Bruce demanded. I don't understand, Batman. I'm your friend," Otis told him, tears falling from his eyes. Back at the GCPD, Detective Wong has just been assaulted by the Batman while trying to bring in a suspect for questioning. She breaks into evidence lockup and begins stocking up on firearms. "Christ," Hatcher says as he walks in on his coworker stockpiling weapons. "You plan on going to war?" he asks. "Pretty much," she tells him. "You coming?" Hours later, Otis Flanagan was dropped off at the police station. He's taken into an interrogation room where the cops are desperately trying to piece together his story. He was my friend," Otis keeps repeating. The man is struggling to understand how a man who he thought was his friend could have so brutally beaten him for information. "I don't know who he is," Otis tells the police, but they remain wholly unconvinced. Hatcher asks the chief to take a crack at the suspect, but when he gets up close and personal, Otis manages to steal the officer's gun. Waving the firearm around the room, Otis finally says, "I was just trying to do something good," and shoots himself. Leslie and Bruce, meanwhile, are both trying to reconcile what happened a few hours prior. "Bruce," Leslie says, "you lit a fuse with the GCPD tonight. It's not a matter of if it blows, just when." The memory of kicking Blair shocks through Bruce's mind once more. "It's the worst thing I've ever done," he says. Detective Wong, after reading through the old Commissioner Gordon's notes on the Batman, suddenly realizes something monumental. These killings don't at all line up with Gordon's understanding of the vigilante. Either the Batman suffers a psychotic break, Blair realizes, or there's more than one Batman out there. Underneath Gotham, Batman surveys the locations that Flanagan revealed to him. Finally, he reveals a hidden safe house. Searching through the room, Bruce only finds a locked chest with a firearm stowed away. But as he investigates, he hears the familiar of a machine gun behind him. A man dressed in nearly identical clothing as Batman stands in the shadows. But this imposter's outfit is far more militant than Bruce's. Gunfire screams out from the imposter's weapon as he takes aim at the true Batman. A fight ensues, Batman against Batman. Bruce manages to disarm his opponent but takes a beating nonetheless. The battle starts in the safe house but eventually spills out into the sewers themselves, with both combatants fighting for their lives. "He's fast," Bruce thinks, "built like a tank. He hits even harder than I can. so I have to hit him more. Eventually, the imposter darts off into the darkness of the sewer tunnels, and just as he escapes, flashlights begin to shine down the tunnel directly at Bruce. No, he thinks. Impossible. The police shout orders at him, threatening to open fire. Too quick. Bruce's mind races. It's too quick. How are they here so soon? Batman lets the cops approach until they are right beside him. Then, deploying a flash grenade, he blinds all of his attackers simultaneously. Too coordinated, Bruce thinks as he makes his escape to the streets above. Like they knew where I would be. The sun is still shining as Batman rises to the streets. Stealing a pedestrian's vehicle, the Batman races through the streets but has lost too much blood. His vision starts to fade as he crashes the car almost instantly. This can't be how it ends, he thinks to himself. As most of the police comb through the streets, Detective Juan thinks back to her extensive map of Batman's zipline system, realizing there's only one place he can escape to. She speeds off in the opposite direction to her peers. Slowly, painfully, Bruce manages to hook himself up to a zipline high above the city streets. He watches the cops below search for him as he collapses in pain after reaching the next rooftop. But his movements were noticed, and soon a police helicopter finds the bloodied and thoroughly injured Batman. Taking no chances with the vigilante, the helicopter opens fire. With only one way out, Batman leaps off the roof to the neighboring building. Dead end, he thinks. There's only one way out it. But before he can concoct an escape plan, a horrible bang rips out across the night. Bruce feels a bullet pierce his side and collapses once more to his knees. Detective Wong stands before him. Let me see your hands, now, she ordered. Batman can only groan as he holds his wound. He lifts a hand to show his compliance and slowly raises his mask off his face. No, Blair whispers as she sees the face of Bruce Wayne revealed to her. I don't kill people, Bruce says, defiant. Batman does not kill people. There is someone pretending to be me, doing the killing. But it was you on the street. You took Flanagan, right? Blair asks, tears in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. Painfully, Bruce stands. Hold it! Blair yells, but Bruce ignores her this time. I have to go. Either put me down or let me go, he tells her. There is no other option. Blair keeps her weapon trained on Batman as he limps off into the night, but can't bring herself to pull the trigger. Batman escapes just barely from the clutches of the GCPD. He stashes his suit in a dumpster and makes off into the city. He falls unconscious on a pile of trash, pretending to be homeless to evade the police. The next morning, Leslie Tompkins receives her nightly visit from her strangest patient. I've come to say goodbye, Bruce tells her. If you were going to tell anyone, you would have done it weeks ago. But you can't. Leslie can't bring herself to say anything and simply stares back at him. You know I'm right. Batman does make a difference. Therapy is over. Slowly but surely, Batman starts to put together the pieces. The gun he found in the safe house, the training of this imposter, even the judge linking all of the murders. Detective Juan awakes with a start, hearing a creaking in the floor. She reaches for her gun and levels it at the man standing in her room. The imposter is a cop, Batman tells her. I need to know who took a gun from the Loma and bust. I can't get into the GCP as Batman, and I can't do it as Bruce Wayne. Will you help me? Blair has some choice words for Bruce in response. Stopping me doesn't stop him, Bruce tells her as he removes his mask. Don't, she says. I thought Bruce Wayne died with his parents. For years all I felt was rage. Bruce lifted his head to look Blair in the eyes. And then I met you. Bruce slowly backed out of the room. Help me stop him. After that, if you really believe Gotham is better off without me, I won't fight what's coming. And with that, Bruce left without a sound. Later, Blair waits for Bruce in the remnants of a dilapidated Wayne Tower. I wasn't sure you'd call, he tells her. But as Blair starts to tell Bruce what she's found, a red dot appears on her back. Bruce tries to call out, but the gunshot comes too soon, ripping through Blair's shoulder. Bruce desperately reaches down to where Blair hangs by her fingers. He touches her hand when another sniper shot rings out, this one catching Bruce in the back. He falls to where she clings to life and manages to affix his grapple. Let go, he tells her, and both detectives are let down to the floor, though Bruce's back takes the worst of the fall. Bruce's eyesight goes black momentarily, but his eyes dart open upon hearing a gun cocked nearby. He wakes to see the imposter standing above him, holding his gun ready to finish the job.
A perfectly timed smoke grenade stuns the imposter just long enough for Bruce to close the distance between them. Giving everything he had, Bruce tried desperately to take down the man, but it wasn't enough. His wounds placing him at a disadvantage, Batman was hurled to the floor by the imposter, cracking his skull against the concrete. But as the imposter stood above Bruce, ready to finish him, 3 gunshots rang out from Blair's gun, striking the imposter in the back. Barely standing, the man walked over and kicked the pistol from Blair's hands. "Bye, Blair," he said as he held the barrel to her head. Batman screamed as he lifted himself up. "Hatcher!" he yelled, accusing the imposter. Hatcher, his identity having been laid bare, was silent. Then, "Yeah, sure," he said. But before he could pull the trigger and kill Blair, Batman let loose a single batarang. His projectile lodged itself in Hatcher's eye socket, causing the imposter to scream in pain. Hatcher fell backwards, nearly plummeting to his death if Batman hadn't caught him. But Hatcher took the batarang from his eye and plunged it into Bruce's hand. Batman could do nothing as the cop who impersonated him fell to his death. Standing, Bruce was faced with one last gun pointed his way, this time from Detective Wong. "Bruce Wayne, you're under arrest," she told him. "Okay," he said, placing his hands behind his back. But as Blair cuffed him, he said, "Do you think Gotham will be better off without me?" Blair stopped, staring at him. Silence came over the two. In the end, Blair stood alone, having let Bruce go. Whatever legacy he was building, whatever clarity in the symbol he hoped to achieve, she thought, is lost forever. Batman may have stopped his imposter, but can he defeat his greatest creation, his own failsafe?